Welcome to our weekly program, The Inside Story of Chabad in America through the Mindel Archives. Yesterday was Yud Gimel Elul. Yud Gimel Elul was the Chasana of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and we already discussed in previous programs about the Chasana of the Frierdiker Rebbe. But today, I want to share with you an English letter that the Rebbe answered someone who had a problem with Shalom Bayis. Now I want to say that the Igris Kodesh, the English letters, that the Rebbe comes across more down to earth. He expresses himself different than the Igris Kodesh in Hebrew. More personal. The Kedusha is the same. It's both the same Rebbe's letters. As I mentioned once, that when Rabbi Mindel came to dictation, and the Rebbe said, this letter should be written in Hebrew. This letter should be written in English. This letter should be written in Russian, and in different languages. So they're the same thing, but he expresses himself in English much different. Why? Because the English letters cater to the entire world. More Jews in the world speak English. Hebrew is limited. So English, everybody, the Americans, people speak English in England, in Australia, South Africa, people speak English. So he expresses himself in a more personal way in the English letters than the Igris Kodesh. As I mentioned once, that in 1940, the Frierdiker Rebbe said to Rabbi Mindel that Hasidus, Tanya is a closed book. Tanya is written in Hebrew. So he wants that Rabbi Mindel should open up Hasidus in the entire world. And he wants him to translate the Tanya into English, so everybody, all Yidden can benefit. And that's how he started. Everything else, the talks and tales and the memoirs and everything in English, because this caters to the entire world. Everybody learns from that. And this is why the Igris Kodesh, the Rebbe expresses, I guess, himself differently than the Hebrew, than the Igris Kodesh in Lashon Kodesh. Now I want to, talking about the Igris Kodesh, I want to tell everybody who is listening that Imirtz Hashem, the 5th volume of the Letter and Spirit is already in print, and in a few weeks you can be able to buy it in the stores, the 5th volume. So I want to share with you a letter today that is not going to be in the 5th volume, it will be probably in the 6th or 7th volume, but I'm going to say Nekuda of this letter that the Rebbe answered somebody about Shalom Bayis. Somebody wrote to the Rebbe, unbelievable. He says, I got married, I went to Kollel, and I sit and learn day and night now. I have already children. I am a big London. And my learning taught me to have Ahavas Hashem, love of God, and have Yiras Hashem, fear of the Eibishter. This is what the learning taught me. Then he says, I also have Yichas. I come from, people from the Vilna Gaon. I have also Yichas. But I need one bracha, I need a bracha for Shalom Bayis. And he writes over here, and I'm going to quote a few words. He says, I want my wife to realize who I am, my lomdus. Apparently, the wife doesn't respect his learning so much, and or she doesn't have kavod as much as he wants her to have kavod for her. So he says, and that have a problem with Shalom Bayis. So he's asking the Rebbe that the Rebbe should give him a bracha of Shalom Bayis. Then he says, even when I go to shul, some people that know me, they know I know how to learn. Not everybody knows. Okay, this is what he writes. Now, this reminds me, I think it was this the Rebbe Rashab, the Tzemach Tzedek, I don't remember which Rebbe. Somebody came over to the Rebbe, and he says to the Rebbe, when I go to shul, alle treten auf mir. Everybody steps on me. So the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, or the Rebbe Rashab answered, wer hat dir geheißen sich mispashet sein, aber ich soll auf dir treten? Sei sich nicht mispashet, et man nicht treten. Who told you to spread out so much? Don't spread out so much. Nobody's going to step on you. This reminds me more or less on that type of a person. Now, this is a very interesting how the Rebbe, being so busy, and he has time to answer this person. And by the way, I have a peckle that children wrote to the Rebbe with crayons before the Rebbe's birthday, and they wrote some questions. The parents, I guess, helped him. And the Rebbe has time to answer on that paper. He answers them certain things. How much the Rebbe answered everyone. And I came across a few weeks ago that somebody from California, an 11-year-old boy, wrote to the Rebbe, I'm 11 years old. I overheard that my father is telling my mother that I'm not going to yeshiva because my father cannot afford tuition. So they don't want to let him in. And he wrote this to the Rebbe. The Rebbe got this letter. He called Rabbi Chadakov. And the Rebbe was on the other line. And he told Rabbi Chadakov to right away call him that they should take him to yeshiva. Number one, that's the main thing. Then later on they can discuss it. But no child can be refused because of tuition. This is the Rebbe's Shita Bichlal. So I just want to say this is Maimar Musgar. So the Rebbe has time to answer this person also. So I'm going to tell you what the Rebbe answers. B'kitzur. To have real Ahavas Hashem comes after the other Ahavos, the other Ahava, with a Seder in Torah. So that's it. Now, so I looked at this. I thought I'm saying myself. I looked up what does the Rebbe mean as Seder in Torah. So I think that it says that there are 4 types of love, 4 types of ahava. There is an ahava between husband and wife. That's one type of ahava. Then there is a love between 2 friends. Then there is an ahava between a parent and a child. And then there is an ahava between a yid and the Eibishter and God. In the Torah, we find that in the beginning about the Seder of Ahavas. I found in Vayera, where we're going to read the Akedah on Rosh Hashanah. It says that the Eibishter said to Avram Avinu, Kach es binchas yichitcha asher ohavto. Take your son which you love. This is an ahava between a parent and a child. Then in Chayisore, there's an ahava between a husband and wife. It says that when Yitzchak took Rivka to the tent of Sore, there it says Vayehoveho. In Toldos, again, is the ahava between a parent and a child, where it says V'Rivka Ayheves es Yaakov. Then in Vayetze, again there is a ahava between a husband and wife, where it says Vayehav Yaakov es Rochel, Vayishak Yaakov leRochel. Vayeshev again is the ahava between a parent and a child, where it says that the Yaakov Ohav es Yosef. So this is the ahava between Bein Ishli Ishtoi and between a parent and a child. Then in Vayikra, it says V'yahavto l'reyacha kamoicha. Later on, the Ahavas Yisrael between 2 friends, and also V'yahavto asagelim, you should love converts. Then at the end in Dvarim, I think more in Dvarim, it says V'yahavto Hashem Elokecha. Or there's other times it says love the Eibishter, but that comes later. So I think that what the Rebbe said that in Seder in Torah, that in order to have Ahavas Hashem, you have to first have the Ahava Bein Ish LeIshtoi and Ahava between Yidden. Then it'll be, then you'll have the proper Avas Hashem, because he claims that he loves Hashem. Then the Rebbe continues in the letter. It's kedai that you should learn chayvas halvavis, about being modest, bittul. Then there will be the cheretz between your wife and you and your wife, and then there'll be shalom bayis. That's what the Rebbe writes in the letter. When I'll print it in the book, you'll see the whole letter. As we see that the Freya de Rebbe, when he sent the chasana invitation, we see that everything is pashtus. Everything is plain. You can get the invitations. Sometimes people send invitations from Rebbes, from Gdolim, from Invi HaGefen, B'Invi HaGefen. The chosn comes from a big yiches and the kala comes from another yiches. Everything is an invitation. This invitation, that is the minut Chabad that we send, that this is the invitation of the Rebbe sent the Rebbe's chasana. And the Rebbe, of course, had big yiches, but nothing is mentioned. Pashtus, Ahava, 4 paragraphs in the invitation. The first paragraph begins with an Aleph. The second paragraph begins with a Hey. The third paragraph begins with a Vase. And the fourth paragraph begins with a Hey, Ahava. The idea, the inyan of a chasana, there should be an Ahava bin ish li ishtoi. And no yiches, no nothing, because we all have yiches. Every yid is Aben, Avrom, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov. This is number 1. Then another thing that Rebbe writes, and that's a PS, that your I don't have the letter in front of me. Your way of, I guess, learning Torah or the way is, I remember the Lashon. This brings jealousy between people. And this is Hepech HaTorah, the opposite. Learning Torah should bring humility. A person should be modest. V'nafshi kofal hakol tihiyah. Torah teaches modesty. And no favoritism. Bittul. I guess this person needed that type of a thing. So this is more or less the letter. It's a longer, there's more things, but this is more or less the letter of the Rebbe. Now, this reminds me, I was on a chasana a while ago, a chuppah, and there were choshev people there, important people. There were shluchim there, people Litvisher, there were mechaber sforim, people, the head of organizations, the head of yeshivas. There was a lot of things there, a lot of people. I mean, and he was mechabet the brachas under the chuppah. And he gave the brachas to chashiva people, important people, and he didn't say any title. He just said, "Mechaber this one, this bracha." Some of them are Rosh Yeshivas, some of them are the head of organizations, and everything was plain. So, a few days later, I came over to him and I said, the father of the Kala, I said to him, I don't know, you had Rosh Yeshivas, you had people, you had shluchim, a shluch was there. Why didn't you announce his title, who he is? So he tells me, he explains to me, that I don't realize, he says, how much embarrassment it comes when you announce titles. When you speak to somebody, or you write a letter to somebody, he tells me, you can tell him the biggest title. But when you give brachas one after the other, and one is the head of an organization, and you say, and the other one is the head of a yeshiva, and then the third person is a ish pashut, a plain person. Don't you think that he gets embarrassed? And this ish pashut maybe is even greater than the people that are the head of organizations, he tells me. So isn't that embarrassing? So he made up that by his chuppah, no titles. And he hopes that the people that are choshev people should come over and tell him that if you want to give me a bracha, don't say a title, just give me a bracha. And mention my name. Unless it's a grandfather of the chosna kala, then you do say. But otherwise you don't. So this is a very edel zach, how a person thinks about other people. And as we see by the Rebbe, the Rebbe used to give a siddur to Chassanim before Mincha, the day of a Chassan, the Chassanah, and he went out to, before he went to Mincha, he gave a siddur that he should daven from the siddur, and he has to say Al Chait. This is a day of tshuva, to say Al Chait in the Rebbe's siddur. What happens if by the door, when the Rebbe comes out before Mincha, there is 5 Chassanim, or more than 5 Chassanim? Who does the Rebbe give? The Rebbe is not going to show favoritism. The Rebbe is not going to show if somebody should feel bad why the Rebbe gave to this chassan, not to this chassan. So the Rebbe asked, who is a kohen? So he gave the kohen, and then the kohen davens, and afterwards the kohen gives to the other people after he davens, which is fair. What happens if there is 2 kahanim? So the Rebbe gave the siddur to the kohen that gets married first. What happens if there is no kohen? Levi. What happens if there is no Levi? The Rebbe looked on the olive base, like who is getting married first out of all the 5 people. He gives them, but something. Otherwise, not to show that people should not feel bad why the Rebbe gave to this and this person. That's number 1. Bichlal, we see by Siddur Kedushin, be'emes, the chosn should be Misadek Kedushin. He's Mekadosh, the kala, the wife. Why do we have a rov? And it doesn't have to be a rov really. It can be, any person can be Misadek Kedushin. But why not the chosn? Because maybe the chosn cannot read. Not to embarrass a chosn, so the takone was made that one person could be Misadek Kedushin. The same thing also with a Bal Koirei. When you called Sabbath Shul years ago, whoever was called to Shlishi had to lane his parsha. Whoever was called to Revi lanes his parsha. But later they made a takone that one Bal Koirei should read everything. Why? Maybe that person that's called up to the Torah doesn't know how to lane the Torah, whatever, not to embarrass. And this is not to have somebody that they shouldn't feel hurt, it shouldn't hurt anybody. We see even not only people, we see by challah. Why do you cover the challah on Shabbos? Because when you make kiddush on wine, the challah might be embarrassed. Why do you make kiddush on wine, not on challah? So you cover the challah. So this is a thing that is very, very important to know this inyan that befrat in the month of Elul. I once mentioned that when I got married, my father-in-law and Rabbi Chadikov, the same thing, asked the Rebbe if the Rebbe can be Misadik Dushin. And this is the time when the Rebbe already stopped being Misadik Dushin. They were very close to the Rebbe. I mean, I think the closest people that the Rebbe had, it was Rabbi Chadikov, Rabbi Mindel. So the Rebbe said, I would. That's his answer. But how will it seem to other people? That was very careful. I once mentioned that the Rebbe Tzin came to the Frierdiker Rebbe before the Rebbe was married to speak about a shidduch. So Rebbe Tzin said, I want the dowry. I want nothing. I have a good bacher. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, believe me, I would give you, but I don't have money. So she said, okay, but give me like this. In other words, give me rabeistve, So he says, I mean, I have other girls, I have other daughters, I can't. So he says, don't worry. He says, I don't remember the Lashon. He says, the Chassidim will already know what to do. Not to show favoritism. This is very important. And since now we're in the month of Elul, the month of Melech Basodeh, the month of Cheshbon HaNefesh, as the Rebbe always used to say, that when people pay tax, the tax season, you sit down, a businessman, he sits down and he makes a cheshbon. Did he make money this year? Did he lose money this year? And if he made money, and if he lost money, maybe how can he be better next year? The same thing also, that the hero that a person should make a cheshbon hanefesh, and cheshbon hanefesh that's between him and the Eibishter. But think, did he hurt any yid? Was he sensitive to another yid? Which this is the most important thing, and this is the hero before Rosh Hashanah. And I want to give a bracha that the Rebbe is a helpful, that all the tefillas that we do should be mekuyam. We should all have aksiva, v'achsimo teva, lashona teva, mesuka, begashmis, uveruchnis, and we should have a year of Mashiach. And in Mitzvah Hashem, we will continue next Thursday, our Thursday night program. Thank you.